Indonesia. Sinovac arrived a month before the EUA was issued in Indonesia. So it will be stored until such time that it is approved. If it is not issued an EUA, then it will be sent back.
That was Palace spokesman Harry Roque establishing the case for the arrival of 600,000 Sinovac doses by February 23. The Chinese pharmaceutical has yet to secure emergency use authorization.
Another China-made vaccine, those from Sinopharm, also secured compassionate use license from the FDA. 10,000 doses will go to the Presidential Security Group. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. We begin with donated shots from Chinese pharmaceutical Sinovac set to arrive in 2 weeks' time. A huge chunk of the shots will go to uniformed personnel.
The Presidential Security Group will also get thousands of doses from Sinopharm. The Chinese vaccine maker has not even applied for an EUA. Maricel Halili with The Big Story.
The country may have to wait some more before Pfizer's 117,000 doses arrive. From a mid-February target, testing star Vince Dizon says shots may arrive by the latter half of the month.
Nagkaroon po ng konting delays dahil lang po sa processing ng mga dokumento with the COVAX facility at ng WHO.
What's definite is the arrival of 600,000 doses of China's Sinovac on February 23. Majority of it will go to medical frontliners. But as presidential spokesperson Harry Roque reveals, 100,000 doses will go to military personnel, all of which are donated by China. Sinovac has yet to secure an emergency use authorization from the local FDA.
There's already a precedent for that sa Indonesia. Sinovac arrived a month before the EUA was issued in Indonesia. So it will be stored until such time that it is approved. If it is not issued an EUA, then it will be sent back.
While EUA remains pending, another Chinese vaccine, Sinopharm, has been granted compassionate use license by the FDA. Sinopharm has yet to apply for an EUA before local regulators. 10,000 of its shots will be administered to the Presidential Security Group. Roque says this is a necessary step as the PSG has a mandate to protect the president. This is not the first time that PSG personnel received Sinopharm shots. They claim to have self-administered the jabs even without authorization. President Duterte even barred his men from disclosing details of their inoculation should they be called in for a probe.
I do not know if it is retroactive. I do not know when it will actually start its next round of vaccination involving Sinopharm. All that I know is that PSG applied and was granted.
President Duterte, meanwhile, has already decided which COVID-19 vaccine brand he will be getting. His spokesman refused to share the details but insisted that the chief executive has always been consistent about his preference for Chinese-made vaccines. For News 5, Maricel Halili, we are One News.
Considering initial concerns about China vaccines and pending regulatory approval, what does this initial batch from Sinovac and Sinopharm imply about the country's vaccine program? We have with us on the phone former COVID-19 National Task Force Advisor Dr. Tony Leachon to give us his insights. Dr. Leachon, welcome.
Good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Gretchen. Good evening, everyone.
Okay, so let's get this clear. They're saying it will arrive, wala pang EUA, but they're saying, what's the big deal? We'll just store it until magkaroon ng EUA. Kung hindi magkaroon ng EUA, we'll just send it back. Is there anything else to qualify and to be concerned about there?
Well, that puts a real great pressure on the FDA and then the vaccine expert panel to approve it. Parang nauna yung cart before the horse. Kasi usually, you will apply for EUA and then you will order the medications or the vaccines. That's the usual process. But here, you are, it's arriving or perhaps naka-arrive na. And kung naka-arrive na siya, that will, yun nga, parang tingin ko baka ng regulatory capture Para bang nandyan na siya. baka magkaroon ng undue or perhaps subtle or great pressure on the vaccine expert panel to approve it at saka sa FDA. And that can create really some problems. Kasi usually, yung HTA, yung Health Technology Assessment, bago bumili ang Department of Health at mag-procure, kailangan meron munang pagpapaalam doon kasi sila nag-review ng efficacy and safety data ng mga epidemiologists. Bago, yan ang batas bago umorder ng malaking chunk or volume ng produkto na gagamitin sa market. So, and then, papasa sa vaccine expert panel yon, then napapa-approve sa FDA. This is the process na ginawa for Pfizer and Astra.
Okay.
So that will be a problem kung dadating sila dito, Robbie and Gretchen.
Okay, now, Tony, Dr. Liachon, just to be clear, I'm not sure if I heard this right. 10,000 or at least thousands of Sinopharm vaccines set aside, earmarked for the PSG. Did we hear that right? And why thousands for the PSG?
I really don't know the reason why they will allocate 10,000 for the PSG. And then the next question, why the PSG when you have a priority list? The priority list would be the frontliners, and we know that the healthcare workers, not only for the Philippines but for the rest of the world, yung inuuna natin. So that's another issue that has to be explained by the palace.
Okay, and then Dr. Lechon, only because we don't have a lot of time, but you did talk with us before about compassionate use. How is it being used now? Because if I remember correctly, compassionate use was something that does exist, but it's used for certain cases, special cases. You can petition for certain things, but this is now being invoked and seems to be, the predicate seems to be laid down for a massive importation. Has this been done before, and is that a valid mechanism?
Well, on paper, it will be the first time na may huge volume ka of products na gagamitin for compassionate use. Usually, 1 or 2 cases or a few cases lang na a certain product not registered in the country, but you can order it, but not large volume. Kasi ito parang commercial use na to Ang ginagawa naming compassionate use in the past, at I had so many experience on that, is that kunyari 1 or 2 cases, 3 cases na mga ngailangan, and through the request of the physician o orderin mo from the FDA so that the other country na even hindi approved but merong ganong klaseng approval, dadalhin mo dito sa Pilipinas. But this one is really extraordinary kasi parang commercial use to and they're using the compassionate use as a legal excuse for this one, no? Hindi ko alam, but it's the first time. The compassionate use for commercial use, that's the first time na nakarinig ako ng ganito.
Okay. Dr. Liachon, maraming salamat. That was former COVID-19 National Task Force Advisor, Dr. Tony Liachon. A lot of Filipinos still have misgivings on getting vaccinated against COVID-19. Health experts are trying to allay fears, saying side effects are manageable. JC Cosico explains.
Local government units may be all set for vaccine arrivals, but if surveys are to be believed, many Filipinos are hesitant to get jabs.
Ayoko muna, natatakot ako
Bakit? Sakit ako.
Mamaya ibabagay side effect Kaya ayoko muna.
But experts insist that the side effects are mild and manageable.
These reactions are mild to moderate and are usually gone within the first 3 days.
The Philippine Society of Allergy, Asthma and Immunology says mild allergic reactions such as itchy skin, runny nose, rashes, and sneezing can be managed with antihistamines. While severe allergic reactions or anaphylaxis caused by COVID-19 vaccines are also rare, with no deaths recorded. Still, epinephrines are on standby in vaccination sites for any adverse effects after a 30-minute observation period. Pre-medication is discouraged.
We tend to discourage taking antihistamines and steroids before getting vaccinated because they don't always prevent anaphylaxis, and they will mask um, the initial symptoms of anaphylaxis.
Immunocompromised individuals may still receive the jab, says the PSAAI, but response may differ from those with stable conditions. Pregnant mothers who are high risk of getting the virus may also get inoculated. But should allergic reactions appear after, a second dose won't be administered. Allergy to any vaccine component will also disqualify one from getting the jab. The PSAAI says persons who are allergic to other vaccines and injectables should seek medical help. The Health Department says it is still best to consult with doctors.
Magpa-assess po sila at kumuha po sila ng clearance or certificate para masabi ng doktor that they are eligible to receive the vaccines because they have a stable condition as of this time.
The DOH also assures accessible public consultation even in rural areas. For News 5, JC Cosico, we are One News.
The other big stories tonight, the Cebu OFW who tested positive for the British variant has been located in Quezon City. The QC-LGU is looking to file complaints against the patient's manning agency for protocol breaches. The country lags its Asian neighbors in terms of pandemic response. A Singapore-based study shows more than half of Filipinos disapprove of the government's actions on the health crisis. And President Duterte wants the implementation of the child car seat law to be deferred. He also says the motor vehicle inspection system should no longer be mandatory. All that when the big story returns.
Good evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. You're still watching The Big Story. The British variant case from Liloan, Cebu has been found, but in Quezon City. He even managed to leave his hotel despite finding out that he had tested positive for COVID-19. A look at the timeline in Greg Gregorio's report.
The local government of Liloan is right after all. Their resident who tested positive for the British variant of COVID-19 was not tested in Cebu. With the NBI's help, the 35-year-old male was found in a residential area in Quezon City.
We later found out that he traveled back to Manila on a specific day. He had been self-tested because I don't know if he's planning to go abroad, and then he was found to be positive.
The patient is a former OFW in Korea who had stayed in Cebu since August 2020. He lived in Parañaque starting November 17 as he processes papers with his manning agency in Malate, Manila. He last visited the agency on January 14 when he secured a new overseas placement. He had a swab test on January 17 and stayed in a hotel in Santa Cruz, Manila. He tested positive for the virus the following day. His samples were sent to the Philippine Genome Center. On January 21, his agency transferred him to an apartment in Riverside, Barangay Commonwealth via a ride-hailing service. Come February 5, it was confirmed that he tested positive for the UK variant. The Quezon City LG only knew of this yesterday.
Medyo hindi conducive for isolation yung or quarantine yung lugar na pinagdalan sa kanya.
The patient, together with a fellow OFW, has been transferred to QC's Hope facility. The LGU is already doing active case finding. contact tracing and backward tracing for around 20 days.
Once the testing is done and we saw, makikita tayo na merong mga clustering dun sa area, meaning 1 or 2 household na merong COVID positive, criteria na natin to for lockdown.
They will also reach out to the hotel in Manila to know why he was released. Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte says that by next week, they'll sue the patient's manning agency, Baltic Asia Crewing, for a number of protocol violations. With this, the DOH says there are no new UK variant cases so far, and the tally remains at 25. The next batch of gene sequencing results might be released tomorrow. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
With cases steadily rising in Cebu, the Octa research team is urging more stringent quarantine restrictions. Speaking with One News sa Totoo Lang, Professor Guido David likened Cebu's situation to that of the mountain province. He says the spike in the latter was only halted when stricter restrictions were imposed. At the very least, he says current restrictions should be implemented strictly. Cebu City Vice Mayor Michael Rama says there will be no lockdown in his city. Speaking with Radio 5, Rama said they are exercising freedom with responsibility.
So we have to emphasize the world now is also looking at balancing of interest. Not that we value health, but we should also value how to survive.
The Philippines is falling behind the rest of the region when it comes to COVID-19 response. That at least is according to a survey done by Singapore-based ASEAN Studies Center. Conducted from November to January this year, the online survey shows that approval rating for government's crisis response barely reached 8% in the Philippines. That is the lowest in Southeast Asia. Singapore and Vietnam scored the highest in terms of leadership in battling the virus. The survey also found that more than half of the respondents disapproved of government's efforts. At 53%, this is the highest among the ASEAN countries. A close second is Indonesia. Palace spokesman Harry Roque downplayed the survey. He said the local polls show the opposite.
I do know our surveys conducted by Pulse Asia and PSRC, and it shows in one survey, 9 out of 10 support the COVID initiatives of the president. In another study, it's 8 out of 10.
Time for an express look at some of today's big stories. After wide public criticism, President Duterte orders to defer the implementation of the child car seat law. He also wants the new motor vehicle inspection system to no longer be mandatory as the country is still grappling with the pandemic. The palace says lawmakers can use the president's orders as basis to suspend both measures' implementation. House Speaker Lord Alan Velasco says the possible renewal of ABS-CBN's franchise will have to wait until the next Congress. He says the lower house is focused on passing remaining priority measures under the Duterte administration. These include the Bayanihan 3 bill and other economic legislations to aid the country's recovery. And MRT3 General Manager Rodolfo Garcia passed away on Wednesday at the age of 77. The cause of his death still unclear. Garcia was in critical condition last week due to COVID-19. The Transportation Department honored Garcia's leadership and his efforts to improve the railway state. Time for another quick break. When we return, Chinese New Year is just hours away, but celebrations in Binondo remain quiet and muted. And what if your favorite superheroes and characters lived in the time of COVID? A look at them donning a different kind of face mask after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. We are just a few hours away from the Year of the Ox, but in the face of the pandemic, celebrations to welcome the Chinese New Year have become muted. Will 2021 prove to be a luckier year than last? Let's find out in this report by Romel Lopez.
This time of year, Binondo Street should be filled with revelers welcoming the Chinese New Year. But like any other gatherings, physical celebration for the Lunar New Year were called off because of the pandemic. No lion dances, no shows, no parties. The Manila LGU has banned such events. On the eve of the Chinese New Year, Chinatown is almost empty.
Siyempre ngayon medyo malungkot, makikita naman natin kasi konti talaga ang tao. Dati ang nagpapasaya naman ng Binondo, ang pinaka-Chinese New Year feels dito is yung pagiging, alam mo yung siksikan eh. Pero since bawal nga ngayon, naiintindihan naman natin. So pwede na rin.
To attract fortune this year of the ox, Feng Shui expert Master Henry Ong said the money tree is a mess, but it's proving to be an unlucky year for the Lucky Charm vendors.
Ang layo ng difference ng yung business compared to previous years because of COVID. We're hoping kasi it's an ox year, so dapat ox na ox ang year for 2021.
Despite the tight budget, Chinese national allies made sure to buy some charms and fruits.
We just invite our friends, but
Limited only.
yeah, it's just not a lot. And then we just video call to our family because we cannot do like so crowded.
Chinese New Year staple tikoy is still selling like hotcakes, but it is far from the pre-pandemic levels.
Talagang tayo nakikita dahil pandemic, assuming okay naman to. Okay pa naman tayo.
Master Henry expect the Year of the Ox to be a better year compared to 2020, especially with the vaccine expected to arrive soon.
We're expecting a bull run normally around the third quarter because things will pick up after the vaccine will come out.
For News 5, Romel Lopez. We are One News.
Let's take a look at the biggest stories on print and online. From Philstar.com, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is holding policy rates steady as economists forecasted. The move is expected to cushion the inflation rate. The central bank expects full-year inflation to settle in this year's target ceiling of 4%. Moody's Analytics says the Philippine economy has contracted by almost 20%, the second worst performing country in the region. Speaking to Business World Live, Moody's Dr. Stephen Cochrane suggests the need for a strong fiscal stimulus. This is to support pandemic-hit industries and households that lost income-generating capacities. And this from News 5. Aitamen Japer Gurung and Junior Ramos drops the National Union of People's Lawyers as their legal counsel. Gurung and Ramos say they would rather be represented by the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples or the Public Attorney's Office. The two were the first to be charged for alleged violation of the Anti-Terrorism Act. And time now for the big stories in sports. The Dallas Mavericks are on a roll, tallying their third consecutive win after escaping a nail-biter game against the Atlanta Hawks 118-117. Luka Doncic and the Mavs battled it out with Trae Young and the Hawks until the final possession to seal their 12-14 win-loss card. Over in the East, the Brooklyn Nets managed to shake off their loss against the Pistons after edging out the Indiana Pacers 104-94. Kyrie Irving led the Nets with 35 points, while James Harden tallied 19 points, 11 boards, and 5 assists. Moving over to volleyball, Petrogas is beefing up its roster big time after landing two-time conference and finals MVP Myla Pablo. The 27-year-old veteran spiker was left without a team after Motolite filed the leave last month. Pablo now joins other Gas Angels, Ces Molina, Rem Palma, Ria Meneses, and Kath Arado. Pablo's acquisition is seen to boost Petrogas's title bid in the PVL's maiden season as a professional league this May.
Most superheroes wear masks to hide their identity, but this time they're masking up to urge protection against COVID-19. In a 30-second spot, Warner's most popular franchise characters were reimagined, wearing face masks, including Austin Powers,
Release the meteor!
Neo, Humphrey and Ingrid of Casablanca,
He's looking at you, kid.
Pennywise the Clown, the Hobbits, Harry Potter and Lord Voldemort, as well as the Justice League.
I dig it.
Oh, it's on.
The ad closes with a short but stark message. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
Now, for those still mending a broken heart, Gretch, you might just get your sweet revenge against an ex this Valentine's Day. For just $5 or around 250 pesos, you can name a cockroach after an old flame and have it ripped apart by a predator. For a much evil ex who ratted on you, a frozen rat is available for $20 or almost 1,000 pesos. This is part of the San Antonio Zoo's Cry Me a Cockroach fundraiser. Proceeds go to the expansion of the zoo's jaguar habitat. Registration open until February 13. It will be streamed live on Facebook. Harsh!
What broken heart are you saying? Why did you
Wala
call
akong
my
sinabi.
name?
Sinabi ko lang interesting. O, sino ipapangalan natin sa Ipis? Ipis with an I.
Baka ano eh. Sure ka ba? Wala na. Move on na tayo. Oo, di ba? Masaya
Happy
tayo
Valentine's.
ngayon.
Happy Valentine's for
Happy
everyone.
Chinese New Year.
Konghe
I'll be the
Bachoi.
first to greet you.
Konghe
Sinyan,
Bachoi.
koila. Di ba? And that wraps up today's big story. My name is Gretchen Ho. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. I'm Robbie Alampay, and we are One News. Good evening.